The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we focus on people, business, and technology. Today, we are going to tackle one of the hot buzzwords in technology, which is AI. And we're going to cut through the hype and talk about what it really matters for MSPs. Now, we all know that AI is reshaping so much for MSPs and how MSPs deliver services, interacting with clients, and also how they run their own internal operations. Joining me today with PAX 8 is Dave Wiseman, and we've got Dave here. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here, and you are leading the charge, helping MSPs move from AI curiosity to AI capability. And today we're going to unpack where MSPs should focus, what pitfalls to avoid, and also how to turn this wave of innovation into some real business outcomes. And the key word that we were going to talk about over and over is that business outcome. And but man, I tell you, it's an exciting time in technology with AI, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the landscape surely has shifted with the
Yeah,
introduction of large language models, and it's really taken, an industry, AI and data science and machine learning. It's an industry that's existed for quite a while,
yeah,
but it's just really brought it into the spotlight in a way that's really affected every other industry out there.
it has. And we were talking previously just about how AI tools like Chat GPT has really brought it down to the level that everybody can understand. I mean, if we go back to the good old days of the cloud, the introduction of the cloud, and all the marketing confusion about cloud service providers and what is the cloud and all that, then you add in artificial intelligence. It's something that it is, there's such depth to what AI is, and what it means and what it can do for us. But when you take a look at that, the entire world, especially the MSP community, has AI on their brain. Going to conferences, cybersecurity has always been the hot topic. However, next to it is AI, and they are feeding off each other and they're driving each other. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. What are your thoughts and take on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. First, I think that the comparison to the way that cloud services change the game is quite an apt comparison. I think that
Yeah.
AI is largely going to change the game, and similar to cloud services, like it took a while, to
Yep.
go through the process of migrating a lot of the on-prem service to the cloud. And so I think we'll probably see something similar within the AI space, but there will also it'll probably be faster, just because the accessibility is going to be that much clearer. And I think we're seeing it, to your point, with the hype that we have now. You go to conferences and it's a lot of them. AI is
Yeah.
plastered all over the place, and cybersecurity, for all the right reasons, does go hand in hand with it, because there are a lot of implications for when we use these tools, and when our clients use these tools. How are they using them? What of our data is being exposed? And so I think those two are going to continue to go right hand in hand for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's understandable and it's easy to become overwhelmed, in the AI discussions, especially for our clients, on the SMB side. But I think this truly provides an incredible opportunity for MSPs overall. And from your perspective, what do you think MSPs, or essentially why are MSPs uniquely positioned to take advantage at this very moment?
Yeah, I think that's something that so for some context, I'm not from the MSP domain. I came
Yeah.
from like logistics and education tech and telecommunications. And so I only just learned about this industry back in May. And what I quickly learned was that the role that the MSP plays in, for clients, for SMBs, is really a critical one because of the depth of understanding that each of you have in terms of what a client's tech stack looks like and how they
Yeah.
interact with it. And we have these different levels of kind of comfort in having conversations with them about their business. And so, yeah, it's really easy to see how wide and broad these applications are, but it can be difficult to really hone in and figure out, all right, I know what your tech stack is. How do we integrate AI in a way that can support or enhance the way that that client's business like functions? And so
Yeah.
I think that is kind of the starting point for a lot of MSPs, is just like
Mhm.
your understanding of how data works, the pipelines work, and what the tech stack can look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I want to talk a bit about, and I'd love to get your input, and I'll share some of my thoughts as well. Is do you think the opportunity is more about selling AI, to clients, or really using it internally, and just leveraging it internally to improve how an MSP operates?
Yeah,
What are your thoughts?
I think that, like, and this is my read. So I think the short answer is it depends. So the clarification would be, for an MSP that has already done the substantial amount of work that it takes to automate a lot of their processes, to stand up, workflows that make it very easy to onboard clients and to do and manage all the things that they need to do, the internal applications and benefits of AI may not be as big, and the opportunity could be much larger when you look at the makeup of their client portfolio. And so I think that's really what I would advise partners to do first. Most partners, internal applications would probably be where I start. But for
Yeah,
the few that really have stronger technical in-house expertise, where they've been doing a lot of the work internally because they're out there,
yeah.
then their clients might be the more ripe opportunity for them, which is really, really cool to see. And it just opens up a much larger scope for the opportunity that they can capitalize on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that, because I think if they are operationally mature, and they're at that level where they have solid, standard operating procedures, everything is well documented. It's a well-oiled machine. Things are working, day in, day out, and they don't miss a beat. Then they get it. They're at that point where, they can say, okay, these are the opportunities for us to go to our clients and help them be able to run as efficiently as we are. And if you're not at that point, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a matter of looking and saying, okay, how can we leverage AI internally to be more efficient, more productive, more secure, deliver a better client experience, and essentially become more profitable through the use of AI. Then I think it's important at that point where you get your house in order, you get it running the way you want to have it running, so that you have those case studies, your own internal case studies, to go to your clients and say, these are some things that we did within our own business. Now let's talk a little bit about your organization. Where are those bottlenecks? Where are there ways in which you want to deliver a better client experience? Sitting down and looking at, what are their processes? What do those processes look like? How much time do they take? How many people do they touch? And, how can we, look at that and say, how can we compact that? How can we, put some task reduction? Because I think we hear all the buzz in the news of, people's jobs are going to be replaced. Yeah, that can happen. But I think first and foremost, it's that task reduction that is going to help them be more efficient and allow them to see ways in which they can do things differently in their organization. So it's
Yeah,
exciting times.
absolutely it is. And I think I would maybe instead of like a task reduction, it might be worth thinking about it from like an offloading perspective. Like
Okay.
how do you give back some capacity to the people on your team?
Yeah.
Because most teams are pretty well tapped in terms of like, their ad capacity.
Right.
And so if like you were to go, like to your point, go through the process of sitting down and understanding what their workday looks like, how they break down, different tasks, and then to help identify which of those, tasks are good, repeatable candidates to automate. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's a good place for a lot of partners to start.
Yeah. So let's as far as demystifying AI, it's work, not magic. There is magic involved in some of it. It is amazing some of the things that you can do, some of the tools that are out there that are just mind blowing. That allow you to get from point A to point B in no time flat. But I think the challenge out there is that a lot of MSPs assume that AI is going to require some very deep data science or coding experience just to get started. What's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely not. So I think that can help. For me, it definitely helps, and I'm sure it depends on the person. For some people, they want to have that context and that deeper understanding of the intricacies of the systems that they're using, but it's certainly not required.
Yeah,
You can definitely these tools are built in such a way that you can interact with them through natural language, and many of them, that's why we have the low code and no code solutions, and that's really to
right.
make these things more accessible for people. And so before jumping into, tools, solutions, things of that nature, it makes a lot more sense for these partners and for our MSPs to take on that role if you're not already, those conversations that you were describing, because I think not all of our partners are doing that sitting down with the partners, really understanding what their pain points are, playing more of that VCIO type role, that strategic partner who's essentially saying, okay, what
Yeah,
does your business, how does your business running, what are the areas where we could apply a tool or a technology to help alleviate whatever pain point you may have, and whether that's like a very time consuming task that could be offloaded to an agent or to some version of an automation, that's very much the starting point.
yeah, and I think when we look at things that can be done in a client's business, right? I mean, it takes that understanding of what their business is, and we're talking about things that are technical. We're talking about things that are, really just how they operate. What does the workflow from start to end look like? And every organization is different. Every industry is different, and it comes down to sitting down and meeting with people, not just leaders in the organization, but end users, the people that who truly day in, day out are making it happen, and learning from them and finding out, where would they like to see things be done differently, because they're the ones that day in, day out are, struggling is not necessarily the right word. Maybe in some cases they're struggling to accomplish it because of lack of time. But more so just thinking, I feel like I'm a robot. I feel like I'm doing something over and over and over again. And we live in 2025. We're moving into 2026. And there are so many tools available. I feel like we could do things in a more efficient manner. But what are those tools? How do we make that happen? And it's that conversation that will make the big difference.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And it's funny because oftentimes, like that feeling that you described, the person that's like, there's got to be a different way,
Yeah,
that not everybody has that. And I think that if you have someone in your organization that has that question,
right.
that's the person that you want to encourage to go go and figure out what that would be. Like take that curiosity, like I'm pretty sure there's a different way to do this. And I'll give you an example of something like that. It was, one of my first jobs. I had never really done business process automation or like optimization, but I ended up falling into it because they were like, hey, this safety manager is leaving. He does all this reporting, and you seem to be pretty good with like tech stuff. So go and sit with this guy and figure out what he does. So I was about to take on all of his reporting responsibilities.
Okay.
And for me, what that looked like was sitting down, having him talk through it with me, just like show me the steps that you go through. And then it's like,
Mm,
okay, about how long does this take you? And when do you do this? And I ended up drafting this like workflow and taking what was taking 40 hours and was able to compress it and just build some very simple Excel things to just
Yeah.
get that down to an hour. But to your point, that required a ride along, like actually sitting down and having that
Right.
conversation with someone doing the work. So you made a really good point about how like you can't identify all these opportunities from a boardroom or from, like an
Right.
ownership level. Like you really need to engage that frontline crew, the people who are doing the work and like deepening their understanding. And I think what we've seen from some of our partners, which has been really effective, is some just like workshops where they like teach people about tool or like teach people about like things that they're using today and what's possible, which oftentimes is a way to kind of inspire people or make some connections that they're like, oh,
Yeah.
I do this thing. What if we did this? And then boom, now you've identified a use case opportunity, and now you can like log it, scope it, flesh out what the impact is going to be, and then file it in your list and figure out which one's going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the stories of what they do, just learning about what does your average day look like, and I can think back into my own MSP, going back several years where, there's a client, a nonprofit, they, maybe 35, 40 employees, and they go out and they do training sessions at schools. And after these training sessions, the parents that attended training they fill out a hard copy survey. And so they're filling out this, they take these surveys back, they go back to the office. They have volunteers that will take all this information from the hard copy surveys, put it into an Excel database, you know, create some pretty looking forms, right? So it's a process. It takes
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And even way back then, those were the type of things that you look at. You think, okay, what about, Excel forms, within Microsoft 365, where we can have a digital form and they complete it right there on their, their smartphone, their tablet, whatever the case may be. They fill it out and they hit submit and all that data is there. It's already entered in. You don't have the risk of, maybe human error, somebody entering it in, maybe incorrectly. The reports are available immediately. There is no delay of that data, traveling back to the office and then sitting on someone's desk until those volunteers come in. And it's just instant. And so, you think about like that is a very, very basic example of how we can improve their workflow. And that's just using a tool within 365. We're not even talking about, AI,
I, I think that's the thing that people are most surprised by. Like I'm the AI guy, and
Yeah,
what I tell people is it doesn't have to be the Lamborghini of solutions.
right, right.
I assure you that some of the biggest opportunities out there are going to be more simple automation. And
Yeah,
that's not to say that we shouldn't also be exploring and identifying, like, hey, if we were going to integrate an agent into our operations, what would
yep,
that look like? What function would they perform?
right.
And I think that that's like a really critical part. But throughout that process of discovery and really deepening your understanding of the business, you will want to ensure that whatever that agent is doing is going to be the most efficient way to do it,
Yeah,
because you don't want to take a junky process and be
right.
like, okay, agent, let's like train you to do this really convoluted thing that we do. You want to fix the process first, and then you can offload it to an agent,
Yeah,
because if you don't, then you're going to, get wrapped around the axle trying to build an agent to do this like kind of overly complicated thing. So
right.
what a good example.
Yeah, and another one that's just so simple, but it takes time. Within our own organization, within Everything MSP, as new people come to our Everything MSP Facebook group, they fill out a form, and there's no integration into HubSpot, from Facebook groups at all. So they fill out the form, and it submits that information to us. We'll do a screenshot. Those screenshots will be in our photo roll. We'll take all that information, we'll put it into HubSpot. It's a process. So we built a tool that literally takes those screenshots and it automatically captures the data that's in those screenshots, the person's name, their email address, how they heard about us, and whatever other data there is that's within it. Then what happens? It automatically populates it into HubSpot. I mean, it's literally you add the screenshot, you submit it, boom, it's done. So you've saved so much time, from the process. You've also made it instantaneous. So once you approve it, you can instantaneously do that. Now, of course, there are other ways that you could go about this, but those are just the little things that you look at and you say, okay, we've taken this from taking X amount of hours to do to taking nearly no time at all to accomplish. And we're repurposing that time into things that talent can use for more purposeful things.
Yeah,
And that
more,
that's such a huge difference.
and there's a compounding effect, right? I think that's
Yeah.
something that it would be when people, as MSPs, evaluate, do I even want to try and do this thing? It's important to recognize that each of those things that you go through to address has a compounding effect. You've taken one process and you've offloaded. You've gone and done this little automation thing. Like, that's just gone, and now you don't have to worry about that. Like,
Right.
there's some small maintenance piece that you're going to want, like, make sure that you always like leave some capacity to manage. But aside from that, like, you can start to just like stack those things, which means that the quality of your service can just keep going up, or
Yeah.
your cost savings like gets realized. Like, it's really up to you, but there's so much opportunity for expanding growth, becoming more efficient, whatever it is. And whether it's your efficiency like internally for a partner or for your clients, like, that, both ripe opportunities.
You think about stickiness with your client. We all look for ways at how can we become more sticky with our clients, get them to be raving fans, get them to a point that they would never think twice about replacing us.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? By providing true value like this, sitting down with them, allowing their business to become more successful. That's what's going to keep them with us for life, for the long haul.
Yeah.
Huge difference. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of goes right back to aligning to outcomes, right? Because I
Yeah.
think what you're talking about is like the way that someone gets sticky is that their business becomes successful, and their
Right.
business becomes successful in some measure that they care deeply about, top line, bottom line,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like, you have built some solution or delivered some service that directly relates to the outcomes that they care about,
Yeah.
and that is where we are going to find that our retention and our stickiness just like it becomes realized, and those people will continue to want to work with us because we're invested.
Yep. So, you often talk about starting small and, narrowing your focus. What does this look like for the average MSP?
So for the average MSP, yeah, like most partners, I would say probably do two things, and you can decide if you want to try to do them concurrently or independently. So internal focus, like, sit down with your team and do a rough draft of like, where do we think our internal processes could use some work,
Yeah.
and use the same method that you would with a client. Like, what are the pain points within the org? Where is there a lot of time being consumed doing some like more rote or mundane task or activity? And then estimate what you think, if we didn't have to do this one thing, what would be the impact to to our org. And then that allows you to like, all right, then you can at least hone in on something very specific.
Yeah.
Oftentimes what we find is that people will bite off more than they can chew. The scope of their project will just be a little bit too large. And so as you're working through these POCs, it's really critical to just like shrink and narrow the focus to like a very specific thing. So if you have a task that requires 15 or 20 steps, maybe you just pick a couple of those steps or one that you're
Yeah.
like, all right, let's get this chunk into a version, because that's oftentimes what happens is like you have some series of steps or functions that need to be like done, and then you just kind of build one by one. When you tie any given one step to a measurable impact, that's where you can say, okay, team, we said we're gonna set out to do, you know, to classify this ticket. We just want to know what it is. We're not going to worry about piping it back into the system. We just want to know, okay, I'm going to set up this integration where like I see ticket or email comes in, there's case. Now I just take that and I can like feed it somewhere and do that. So
Yep.
the main thrust is get real narrow on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and then measure it and see that you actually got to do what you wanted it to do.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about
yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about shadow IT. Shadow IT internally within our own organizations. So let's say an MSP discovers that some of their techs are currently using tools, whether it be Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, unofficially. Is that something that you shut down? Is it a signal where innovation is already happening and you let it roll? What's your take in that area?
Yeah, the first question would be, do you already have an acceptable use policy, like for the partners that already do that? If they
Yeah,
do, maybe there's something that like, all right, maybe we should consider, some consequence for that. But if you don't, my read is let's see what that opportunity is. Like, why are they using this? And so
yeah,
to kind of be curious about what it is they're doing, because like it could be very easy to jump to just like, oh, we're not supposed to do that and just shut it down. But if a person has found some incremental value to using some tool, that is the opportunity to understand why. What
right.
about that tool is like helping address some pain point within their workflow or enhancing the quality of the output that they're working on? That right there, like shadow IT in and of itself is the start of a conversation. And for me, that like oftentimes leads to a clearer understanding of a pain point, which allows us to
Yeah.
talk about a solution and tie it to an outcome.
It gets them excited, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
gets them
Yeah.
to a point where, we want them to have something that they come to work. We don't expect them to get out of bed and do somersaults and saying, I'm going to work today. But we do want them to feel good about what they do and to feel like they have some, creative freedom and some ability to say, I want to help this business become more successful, right? Because it should be part of that culture. And so I think I like that. I think that's great. And obviously there needs to be some controls and some limits, especially when we're talking about, personal identifiable information or any kind of sensitive data. But, be cautiously curious when it comes to
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. I think that's why the use policy has started with that. Just to make
Yeah.
PII, that's a big no-no. You
Right.
should know
Right.
better. And hopefully there are no consequences needed in the immediate term. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good starting point, that's for sure.
And it brings up a good point too, as far as our acceptable use policies. If they're current, how when was the last time they were updated? And are they so old that we're more focused on what somebody might be Googling, versus what somebody might be putting into an AI tool. So
Yeah, exactly.
all right. So as we move on, talking a bit about client expectations, we all have that client who says, we heard AI can solve our problems. How should the MSP handle that conversation without killing that enthusiasm? But
Yeah.
still setting those boundaries and those realistic outcomes.
I think it takes a deft hand to take that excitement and energy and encourage it into a way where you can uncover what it is that they really want to try to do. Because
Yeah.
that for them, they may see some specific value to them. It's like, oh, if it can do this, that would be really helpful.
Right.
And so for the MSP, whatever this is, you want to know what that is
Yeah.
because that's going to be the opportunity for us to be able to like work with them, deepen our understanding of one, what the pain point is, and then you can kind of back into a solution by saying, okay, like, well, where does all the data live? What would it take to actually build that? And then you can work with them to figure out what it is. And so it definitely is helpful to temper their expectations because it's not going to be, it's not an AGI, it's not a general intelligence or a super intelligence that's just going to immediately be able to solve the problems, but
Yeah.
it will be able to do a lot of things. And it's our job to be able to help them understand what those things are that it can do.
Yep.
And to
So,
push our own boundaries of just like I continue to be impressed by the things that I see, and I love that. Like we have to be very careful about the expectations and the ideas that we hold, because those things can change very rapidly, and so we should allow ourselves
yep.
to be pushed.
Absolutely. And, so as we're working to wrap things up, for MSPs that are ready to take, that first step or that next step into AI, the right way, you guys have put together some really incredible resources. You have the MIP playbook, and which, for anybody who's not familiar with the term MIP, it's that managed intelligence provider. So, that shift from MSP to MIP. And then you also have the agentic inflection point report. So can you tell our audience a little bit about these two documents and how valuable they are and how they can help them in two different ways?
Yeah, the agentic inflection point report was released back in June at the Beyond flagship event. And that was really the starting point of just understanding what's happening in the field, and why AI is going to have such a drastic effect on the MSP industry. And that I think that's also where they launched like the MIP term, so the managed intelligence provider term. And so that, again, the agentic inflection point report is focused on the why. The MIP playbook is the how. It's a much more tangible framework for partners to be able to go and understand, like, okay, yes, I understand that AI is happening, but what do I do about it? And how might that work? And so if you have not already read it, I would encourage you to read it in, whatever format you like. If you don't like reading, if you like a podcast format, take that, drop it into a notebook LM, and then like have it converted to a podcast format. Make it accessible to you. You have tools available that can do that.
Absolutely. And I do have the URL where you can download both those reports on the ticker. And now, for those that want to go deeper, I've heard you guys have a couple AI boot camps coming up in 2026. Can you share some details about that?
Yeah. So when you go to this website, you'll be able to fill out a form where you can stay in tune with the kind of the updates that PackSite has. But we're going to have 2 boot camps next year, one in Chicago, April 8th and 9th, and then one in Dallas, August 19th and 20th. And so they're effectively going to be AI boot camps, helping partners take that MSP to MIP journey. And so more information to come in January. But yeah, we're excited to be hosting some of these
Nice.
events that'll really help facilitate that, that evolution.
Absolutely. And I love what you guys are doing, taking the lead, being in the forefront of this AI movement. This has been a fantastic conversation. I love how you broke it down into something practical and actionable for MSPs. For everybody out there listening, don't wait for AI to land. It's already here. The real opportunity is by learning, and just doing it, making it happen. Like Dave even mentioned, taking that, that book and put it into a podcast format. The tools are there, and leverage it internally. Look for ways in which you can, become more efficient with your own organization. Use those as examples of how you can help your clients. The time is now, and we are living in what I'm going to say is one of the most exciting times right now. This huge movement, this huge change. And, with that being said, Dave, I want to thank you so much for your time, for being here. And I greatly appreciate everything that you've shared with us today.
Absolutely. It's definitely a wild time. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for everybody out there listening, I greatly appreciate you being here and listening to us. And until next time, we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.